And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS Podcast. We're here today with Connor from the Loonacy Podcast to chat all things Minnesota United for the 2024 season. Connor, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited.
Good, good. We're really happy that you're here. We'd love to chat with all the other representatives, and I know this is going to be equally as exciting, even though I forgot to ask you if you've got a scarf ready for Scarf of the Week.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I don't have one with me, but I have a ton upstairs.
Okay, so here's what we'll do. We're gonna hit this pause button. And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS Podcast. We're here today with Connor from the Loonacy Podcast to talk about all things Minnesota United in the 2024 season. Connor, how are you doing? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you. We're super excited to chat more things about Minnesota, a team that, you know, we've been told we don't give too much love to on our show. They were actually our first quote unquote
Uh,
haters.
you wouldn't be the only one, but I mean, you guys have me on, so we appreciate the time here. That's for sure.
Yep. I'm hoping you're a bit nicer. They were the first time we ever did this. We called it a deep dive series, and we posted it, and the comments filled with they didn't even talk about half the things we were supposed to talk about. This isn't a deep dive.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
fittingly, we've changed it to not so deep dive. So that's what we're going to get into.
Well, yeah. To be honest, a lot of that probably comes from a lot of angst of not just you guys, but the MLS in general. There have been a lot of fans that have been very angry about Minnesota not getting the light of day on either Extra Time or the MLSsoccer.com or whatever. So it's a lot of that probably comes from some angst there. But hey, let's do this. I'm ready to put the spotlight on us here.
Awesome. Love it. Well, that's what we're here to do. We're here to give you a little bit of insight, but we do have to pump the brakes a little bit because before we can go into Minnesota United 2024, we have to go into Scarf of the Week. So I want to know what scarf you brought today for our nice little segment here.
I brought a little classic here. So I have been a Minnesota United season ticket holder since the beginning. Since the beginning of the MLS at least. And even before the MLS days, I was a season ticket holder in their last season when they were in the NASL as well. And so I brought the inaugural home opener scarf between Minnesota over here and Atlanta United here. It was and if you recall that year, it was the home opener was between the two expansion sides that year, Minnesota and Atlanta. They had both joined in the same year. And we call it the snow opener because it was snowing cats and dogs on that day, and the field was completely white, and they had to use an orange ball, and unfortunately Minnesota ended up getting blown out that game. But this always has a special place in my heart because it signaled the beginning of pro soccer in Minnesota, and I've been a pro soccer fan since I was just a little one. So yep, here it is, the inaugural one.
Love that. That's a brilliant scarf. The meaning behind it is great. And I have a feeling it ties into my co-host, who I didn't even introduce here, Connor.
Hey, what else is new? You always just forget about me.
Yeah, you're a forgettable guy. What can I say? But I have a feeling it ties into something that you're about to show off.
That couldn't have segued better into my scarf because I don't have a Minnesota scarf, but I am an Atlanta United fan. So I brought out my Atlanta scarf to pay homage to our expansion brothers in Minnesota. So here's I haven't busted this one out in a while. I actually really like this scarf. So
yeah, that's a great scarf. That's awesome.
That worked out perfectly.
We've always thought of Atlanta as kind of our big brothers down there because Atlanta's dominated the series for most of the time against Minnesota. So, but we play against each other for the first time in 4 years this year, I think.
Should be exciting.
Yeah, it would be a really nice matchup.
Yeah. I also don't have a Minnesota scarf. It's one of the ones on my list to get relatively soon because I think I got a couple cool ones on there. So I've stretched it. So I am throwing it back to a date that I believe kickstarted the downfall of my European club. So I've brought out the Everton Football Club scarf to throw back to the 4-0 drubbing you guys gave them in
Oh
preseason
my
back in
goodness.
2021, which has now started a down the hill snowball effect to play off of the snow theme, to put us into a position. You know what I think it is? I think what happened is Everton came overseas. Minnesota United embarrassed them. The Premier League was like, oh, we can't be having teams in our league that are looking bad overseas. We're going to hit them with as many points deductions as physically possible so that we can make sure that whatever happens, they are no longer giving us a bad rep. We can call them a championship club. And thus we're in the position we are today. It's definitely not conspiracy theorist at all. I think it's actually really spot on. But I don't get a chance to show this one off as much, so I figured this is a good time to do it.
That's awesome. I've seen Everton play once in my life, so that was I saw them play against Chelsea when I was just a little kid. But yeah, that's it was back when Everton had Tomas Radzinski as their striker. Remember the Canadian international back then? And they came down, and this was before Chelsea had all that money from Roman Abramovich. But I saw them play once, and it was my first ever Premier League soccer game. It was awesome.
Love it. Yeah. So, as much as we love to talk about how the butterfly effect from Minnesota United's preseason game to current day has affected Everton FC, I think more people want to chat about Minnesota United's 2024 year. So, at this point, this is usually where I start talking about how the manager is in place and they finished in certain places, but Minnesota's in a bit of a different position. Cameron Knowles, currently the interim to the interim manager, is holding down the fort until the team can find a permanent manager after former interim manager Sean McCauley left to pursue a job with Indy 11 in the USL. They finished 11th in the West last year, 21st overall, 10 wins, 13 losses, 11 draws, missed the playoffs. What's going on with the coaches over there, man? What is the deal?
Dude, your guess is as good as mine, to be honest. We brought. I've been shouting for Minnesota to hire a coach pretty much ever since Adrian Heath was let go a couple games before the end of the season last year. And I had my short list of coaches that I wanted to take the job, but it just seems like there's not a lot of priority put on hiring a new coach, and I really couldn't tell you why. It seems like there's they've hired a new chief soccer officer in Khaled Al Ahmad. They kind of wanted to see at first how McCauley would take the job as an interim, and they wanted to see how he would handle the team moving forward, maybe for at least the first half of the season. But honestly, I've heard very, very little ever since McCauley left, and Cameron Knowles. He's put forth a little bit of strategy talk. He wants the attacking play to be very aggressive with Minnesota United. So I'm interested to see what he has, but it's just been chaotic. It's just been a bunch of chaos between the front office and even trying to get a candidate in the office. It's just complete nuts up here in the Bold North.
Yeah, I there were rumors that they were waiting for this chief soccer officer to come in, but now he's in. There's very little talk. It's very, very confusing. From the neutral point, it's like the team finished not in the playoffs. You thought that there'd be a lot of movement and a lot of noise about, oh, what is Minnesota doing to fix this? And it's just been relatively quiet on the channels, right? So I mean, I guess we can dive into some of the things that they have done. That being, they've been relatively busy, like quietly busy. Not a lot of people talking about the moves, but the people are coming through the door. Who do you think is the best addition so far that they've made?
Well, I believe that would have to be Victor Eriksson, the center back that we got from Värnamo in Sweden. He's only made maybe one international cap for the Sweden national team, but he played a lot in the last couple of years for Värnamo, and honestly, it kind of goes hand in hand with Khaled Al Ahmad coming over as well from Europe. He was with Barnsley before, but he did do a little bit of work over in the I believe it was the Swedish league up there. So I wonder if there's some connection between Khaled Al-Ahmad and Victor Eriksson, but he's a big, strong, young center back from Varnamo. Not a big goal scorer, but just big and takes up a lot of space in the box. And I think I am really, really excited to see what he does because we needed some youth on our back line with Michael Boxall getting a little older and maybe not being much of a first team player anymore. And then we've got, of course, Bakai Dabasi. He is getting a little bit up there in age as well. And Miguel Tapias could use a little help with the younger side. So I think Victor Eriksson could be a good addition to that.
Yeah, sorry, Connor. Mr. Wright, to avoid confusion. I would like to bring you in, but I'm just going to piggyback off of that because I also have Victor Eriksson as my best addition. Again, it's going to be okay for now. Like he'll help Boxall, he'll help Tapias, maybe a rotation piece, but the center back room on this team looks phenomenal for the next 3-4 years. I mean, Tapias is the oldest of the group I'm about to run down, but Eriksson, Marquez from last season's incoming, and this draft pick they brought in, Bakra, looks.
That would have been my second pick as well. Hugo Bacharach. I'm so excited for what he's going to bring to the team.
Dude looks like an absolute baller. I watched his highlight tape during the draft. I mean, there are very few players that come out of that draft. You're like, oh man, this guy's going to be a stud. This guy feels like he's got all the makings to be somebody who's going to be very, very special.
And I love the fact that he's a Villarreal Academy prospect as well. This was 10 years ago, but this was back when Villarreal was a Spanish powerhouse, and they still kind of are a little bit. But Hugo, to have the background that Hugo Bacharach does, and then to come to America, join the NCAA college soccer system, and then he's exactly what we needed in a young draft pick. And so it was a great pick by Minnesota United. I love that pick. And I'm, again, like you say, Andrew, he might be a bit of a depth piece for the next couple of years or so. But I think that eventually he and Victor Eriksson could end up pairing up really well in the next couple of years when, some of the older players have gone out, and it's, maybe 3 or 4 years from now, they could be back in playoff contention or even in the conversation for a Western Conference title. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just got a good hype feeling to it. But Connor, what are you thinking, Mr. Wright? Sorry.
Allow me to complete the three-peat. I've also gone Victor Eriksson. Not really a ton to add. I think you guys kind of hit it on the head. Really, just I was of the same mindset. I feel like Boxall, I think, he's getting older, and all the competitions they're adding definitely need to look to add some more depth to the position. And I think Eriksson's got that potential to, if not right away, take over that other starting center back spot with Tapias. So I think it was a good addition to bring him in. And it was one of the few additions that wasn't at the center mid spot. So that was definitely a bright spot.
Yeah, and with all those players kind of coming in, some people did have to move on. Connor, what are you thinking about the biggest moves out?
There were quite a few of them that happened at the end of the season, but I think we're gonna go. We at Loonacy headquarters up here in Minnesota, we're gonna go with Ismail Tajuri Shradi.
Ooh, I like it.
He came in maybe halfway through the last year, and just kind of, I feel like he was underappreciated on the team, but whenever he came in, his playmaking ability was so good. He could always find the pass to split the defense and hook up with Timu Puki or Mender Garcia or whoever was up front at the time. But I thought his playmaking ability was excellent, and I was really surprised to see him go at the end of last season.
I've always been a big ITS guy, even from his days at City. Don't love New York City, but had respect for him. So I think it's a good shout. Mr. Wright, your thoughts?
So I looked at the list of players that left, and I really don't see anybody that's like, I'd call it a big loss. Like, I think everybody kind of had minimal impact on the team last season. I ended up going for Mender Garcia, which is a little bit of a tough one because I don't think Minnesota is really going to miss him that much. And I believe he was taking up a designated player spot. So freeing that up is definitely a benefit. But I mean, I think there's still some potential with him. I mean, he's only 25 at this point. It seems like he really just couldn't get it going in Minnesota. Uh, but I think I kind of lean towards him just because I think he still had the most upside out of everybody that left. I think just things didn't work out with his time in Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah, and that I'll just echo that because you stole my notes and stole my pick, so good job. But I also picked that, and again, less because you're gonna feel it like on the field right now. He wasn't getting ahead of Pookie, and even the new incoming player, Song Bin. I want to make sure I get this name right here. Song Bin Jong.
Song
Yeah,
Bin Jong. Yeah, he came
yeah.
in midway last year.
Yeah, I made sure I just want to pronounce that correctly and didn't mix up the order. But only 1,000 minutes for your designated player striker, playing him for 18 months and then quitting on him felt a little rough. I think that being said, not having a coach is not going to get him better, right? So it might have been best just to cut ties and start fresh with whoever comes in next because, um, you know, that is, we've seen that happen to a lot of bigger name players or players with potential that go through a cycle of, 3 different coaches in 18 months. And now you're like, okay, what style do you want me to play? I can't do it successfully. And then it ends up being a waste. So moving on, maybe not the worst thing in the world, but it just feels a little quick to quit on him personally.
Yeah, he was a Mender Garcia fan. I don't think I mean obviously now with Teemu Pukki in the picture with at Minnesota, he was never going to be a starter again, but Mender Garcia, whenever he was on the field, he scored more often than he didn't. And that's saying something for a team that had a lot of trouble scoring over the past few years. So I did like him, but I do think, like you say, Mr. Wright, I think that he taking up a designated player spot was too much to ask for Minnesota to put on Mender Garcia. So freeing up a designated player spot for me was the biggest impact of letting him go, and hopefully they can make good use of that.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Well, you mentioned that there were a couple people out, not too many, but there's got to be at least 1 or 2 players who are going to look to get themselves into that starting 11 this year. Who do you think is that player to watch who might break out in 2024 as somebody we're going to need to keep an eye
on? Oh, well, I think, he's already kind of in the starting 11. But I think even more of a breakout player, I'm going to go with Bango Hule Langwane. Or we call him Bangi up here in Minnesota. But he had a great Leagues Cup, second leading scorer, only behind Lionel Messi. I think he's still very young. He has a lot of speed, and with the right coach to coach him in the right direction, he could end up being a very impactful player on the right side for Minnesota. And like I say, he's already kind of a regular, not all the time, but regular starting 11 player. But I see him growing a little bit more in his role.
Love that. We're big Bongi guys over here ourselves. So big hope that he can break out and be that consistent guy. Mr. Wright, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking the exact same thing. I had Bongi Longwane as my breakout player as well. I think it's a lot of the same sentiment. I think to me, if you're a neutral and you kind of just look up his statistics for the last season, you're most likely going to look at his regular season numbers and you're going to be like, okay, 8 goals, 3 assists, like good step in the right direction, but like, I don't know, like still a bit unsure about him. But I think you got to look at the full picture here because Bongi Longwane was tearing it up in every competition, especially Leagues Cup. I can tell you, Andrew and I were going crazy watching him go just absolutely berserk in Leagues Cup. But he ended up finishing the season, all competitions, with 17 goals, 5 assists. That's outrageously good.
Yep.
I think if he can up his level just in terms of the regular season numbers, I think he moves into that tier as some of the best players in the league. I mean, if he finished with 17 goals, 5 assists just in the regular season, I think he's a top 10 in the MVP conversation. I mean, the potential is 100% there. I just hope that, considering how many players are at the striker position on the team, and I'm not too sure how they're going to line up, I just hope that that doesn't end up hurting his chance for minutes this year.
Man, the
Well,
last
yeah,
time. Oh, go ahead.
we've got a couple players coming back from injury as well this year with Robin Lod returning from injury. He likes to play on that right side. While he was out with injury, that's where Bongi filled in and did it superbly. But with Robin Lod coming back, you're right. I just I wonder what they're gonna do, is if they're gonna split minutes or if they're gonna maybe trade one of them or sell one of them. It's gonna be a tough choice for whoever comes in and heads up the team.
I was just going to say the last time somebody on this podcast said a player was going to be top 10 of anything, they had a pretty bad run of it. So.
That was not a prediction. I didn't say he'd be top 10 this season. I said if the 17 goals, 5 assists from last year was all in the regular season, then I think he would have been in that top 10 conversation for MVP.
I don't think the gods of luck listen to nuance. So
well, I don't have the same curse that you do, so I should be all right.
Last year I said Kip Keller at Austin was going to be a top 10 center back, and he played one game. So hopefully that Connor didn't just curse you. I myself am going with a bit of an interesting one, maybe under the radar, but it's Jordan Adebayo-Smith, the new signing out of New England. So first off, Red Bull make the world take. Spent a season at Red Bull too, so have to give him the little shout out there. Dude torched USLC and MLS Next Pro. I mean, absolutely torched it. Spent some time over in England. Looking at his time in America right now, 19 goals, 10 assists over about 5,000 minutes at that level. And I'm not saying that transitions really like perfectly into the MLS system, but when I saw this news being broken, or New England were actually signing a couple of homegrown, players, and JAS was not on that list. And all of the comments were like, we better not lose this guy. Like, this guy's the future. This guy's going to be the Gustavo Bo replacement. He's going to be legit. And then next, Minnesota comes in and swoops him up. I'm not saying that he's going to come in and make Pookie sit the bench and run amok. But, in terms of players who can come off the bench and maybe give you 400, 500 minutes this year and 3 or 4 late goals, thinking Jason Russell-Rowe, for example, at Columbus is kind of the idea that I see of JAS for this first season, where people don't really, look at it as a big signing of this guy who's going to be, multi-million-dollar DP. But I think he comes in, he gives you a little bit more off the bench than most people are expecting. And I think that gives him the first step to becoming a regular in MLS.
So you're saying he'll become a bit of a super sub then?
Yeah. Hopefully. I think that's a way I can see him being most influential. Yeah.
That's awesome. We've been looking for a guy like that ever since Mason Toy left. So that's awesome.
Good old Mason. Adam's rolling over right now. So as we look here at the season and we're getting ready to jump in, we're only 2 weeks away at the time of recording this. What's that one question that's still lingering here in Minnesota?
Who's going to be our manager? I think that's got to be a no-brainer. We hired a new CEO in the past couple of years, and Sherry Ballard. She used to be up in the executives with Best Buy, and then we had the arrival of Khaled Ahmed from Barnsley. So we're real excited about what he could do. I'm excited about what players he will have his scouting team bring in, because he did a heck of a job up in the Swedish league as the chief scout. But who's going to be the manager now? That's the one missing piece. And like I said, I had my short list of who I wanted to be the manager, but Caleb Porter has been scooped up by New England. And then the one guy I would love to see is Gio Savarese, because he is still without a job. I think he could make a good team out of Minnesota. Or if I really want to be lofty, Jesse Marsh. I think Jesse Marsh could be pretty cool in Minnesota, and he's from Racine, Wisconsin, too, so he'd be really close to home.
I'll tell you, I think Jesse would be great. Gio Savarese did just sign with MLS 360's new Spanish broadcast partner, so I believe he's off the table, which is unfortunate. I think I mentioned it. We haven't done Portland yet, but I mentioned it in my Portland notes that I think it would have been really neat to see Gio get another job in MLS. I thought he still had the ability to do something. I mentioned Minnesota as a spot that would have been a good landing spot for him. But it will be cool that he's still, a part of the league and such. So I'm on the same line as you. How long are you going to wait to get this permanent hire in here? We're looking at U.S. men's national team levels of manager instability right now. I mean, we're looking at interim of the interim of the interim of the interim. Like, we're going down the list here of people who are next up. So
yeah.
And I know that the whole thing, like, oh, we're gonna wait for the new chief soccer operator and whoever that may be, but I just feel like it's too long to wait. Going on the interim, the guy who was there went through the assistant ranks and kind of knows the team. That's one thing, but now you're down to option 3. It feels like you can't go into the season doing that. But then again, it is MLS. Anything can happen, and this usually is one of those things that starts out as a what if I told you that Minnesota United went in with their third choice manager and won the Western Conference, right? Like, that's the sort of story we're going to hear at the end of the year.
That'd be insane if that happened. But like they you say this is MLS, this is also Minnesota United, which on one hand, you totally expect this from the front office at Minnesota United to be this kind of disorganized. But on the other hand, it's a little bit understandable too, because Minnesota has never been in this position in the MLS before. Adrian Heath has been our coach since the beginning when they joined MLS. So they've never had to look for a new coach. So it's a bit of uncharted territory for them. But even that being said, that's 2 weeks before the season. It was too late to look for a coach 2 months ago. It's been far too little too late. So whoever we get now, I would hope would make a splash.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. Mr. Wright, your thoughts?
So my question's also along the coach train, but I guess mine's a little bit different in that my question is going to be, was it a smart move for them to sign all these players before bringing in a coach? So obviously they can sign the players and then look for a coach that will work with the players, but I feel like this is just a personal opinion, but I like bringing in the coach and then letting the coach have a bit more of a say in who the players are that come in. So it's not just like, okay, here's what you got to work with because we already made all these signings and, well, there's something we could do now.
Right. And we've addressed that on Loonacy too. We've, bringing in all these players without a coach bringing in his own strategy and his own playbook. And it's either going to be chaotic or they're going to find the perfect coach to put all these guys together. So it's, that kind of just rounds it out. You can't really make a prediction on this team until you hire the coach. And even then, I think it's going to be a very much of a rebuilding season for Minnesota.
Well, that kind of leads us into our last section here, and that's at the end of the season when everything's all said and done. Where does Minnesota finish in the Western Conference?
I mean, I just said it. I think it's going to depend on the coach, depending on who we hire and who is going to be the best guy to lead this team forward. But I don't see them coming any higher than 11th. I don't think they're making the playoffs this year again. It's just too chaotic of a system right now. Excuse me. I think there's just too much uncertainty on the squad with the managers and the players and with the chaos of what brought in Khaled Al Ahmad as well.
Yeah, I see why that's a
yeah. So I think it's going to be we're going to end up in the double digits, I believe.
Interesting. Mr. Wright, your thoughts?
So I guess I'm taking a little bit of the more optimistic road here because I think there's really good players here. I mean, Pookie was firing off last season, so if he picks up any bit of that form, he's going to be lethal again this year. And we talked already about Bongi Longwane. Love his game. Think he can really be another. I think he can have another really strong season for them again. And then obviously the maestro behind them, Emmanuel Reynoso. I know there was he may have picked up an injury. I don't really know the details of it or if how long he'll be out, if he'll be out for short term, long term. But at least it's it's better than last year where he wasn't here at all. But he's an absolute he is the type of guy that many teams are missing, where he is at his best MVP level. And whether or not we see his best, I don't know. I think, like you said, that really is dependent on who comes in to coach. And that's a big question mark. I think there's good pieces as well around the team. I don't think this team is a super strong team, but I think at their best, they can get that last playing game. So my range for them is between like 9th and 12th. I think if they make the right coach hiring, there's enough talent there to get into a playing game, especially in a Western Conference that's a bit weaker. If they don't make the right coach hiring, then I think they fall back into the double digits like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
with Ray too, it's a left knee injury, it looks like, but he was able to walk off under his own power. So I'm hoping that's a good sign because Ray is a guy that we cannot afford to lose.
100%.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was about to say is the lack of news behind Reynoso is worrying to me, like as a neutral, because if he was fine, they'd come out and be like, oh yeah, he's day to day, he'll be all right. The fact that we're 3-4 days past the injury like report and we're still kind of not sure makes me think it's not not like season ending, but makes me think that there's something not great there.
You would think that logically, but you would need to come and experience the culture of being a Minnesota United fan in that regard, because to be perfectly honest, the coverage on any injuries, let alone Reynoso's, has never been great.
Okay.
Most of the most of the news that we see is from inside sources on Twitter, to be honest, and they're a lot of times they're better than a lot of local news stations that we get all our news from. But it's it is worrying. You're right. That we haven't heard anything, but honestly, we kind of take it with a grain of salt whenever we don't hear anything and just see what happens in the next game. And if he's playing, he's playing. If he's not, he's not.
Yeah, and that's definitely why it's nice to have the people who are on the ground, so to say, in Minnesota, because yeah, to me it was one of those, we definitely need, if we haven't heard about it, it's definitely bad. And then you're like, no, this is just Minnesota. So awesome. That's great. Due with the coaching instability, that Reynoso injury we're just talking about, I also have some mixed feelings. I think they're really strong down the spine. I like their goalkeeper options. I think their center backs are relatively set pretty good. We talked about that already. The center midfield is pretty good. And the strikers are solid. So it's the wide players that are my concern, right? Wide defenders are very scarce for you. And if you're looking for a coach who wants to use attacking wingbacks whenever he gets in, that's going to be, I think, a tough thing. You might see Sonny Dotson fill that role, maybe. The wingers, Lod, Fragapane, Bongi, and then Sing Bong. Again, tried. They're good. Lod coming off injury, Fragapane kind of under, I think, expectations the last season or two. Bongi broke out. Does he come back down to regress to the mean? Does he take it another step? Lots of question marks out there. And I think what it'll really end up to is if they win a few games early, right, with this manager kind of merry-go-round, I'll call it, then I think the sky's the limit. The team then believes in themselves. The team says that they're going to be able to do anything that they're asked of, and it's going to be, sky's the limit. If they come out and they get beat 3-0, 4-0, 3-1 in their first 3 games. I think everybody loses faith in what the project is, and you go then on a run of players who are going to have really, really bad performances. And even when the coach comes in, he's going to have to worry about fixing the locker room before he fixes the field, which is never a good thing to do. I kind of agree with Connor here. I've got him in the playoff. The play-in games are very, it was very close to get in those last year. I've got them between 9 and 13 is kind of my range right now, somewhere between like the very last playoff spot or, completely at the bottom. It'll depend on how the season starts, personally.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So it's looking, I won't say bleak, but it looks like there are some question marks here. And the only thing we'll be able to do is watch and see what happens. And hopefully that they can get the right manager in to get the job done. But Connor, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and having this conversation with us. We really enjoyed it. It was great to hear your insight about Minnesota United.
Yeah, it's been great to be here. And we us here at Loonacy would love to be on again anytime you'd like us.
Absolutely, and we'd love to extend the same courtesy. Or want us to come on talk Red Bull or Atlanta? We're always here for you. Always here to work with you. We do want to give you some time to let people know where to find you. Our fans know where to find you.
Yeah, you can find us at pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Amazon Music. We're a member of the Beautiful Game Network. We pretty much on iHeartRadio podcasts. You can find us pretty much anywhere you have a podcast. So you just look us up. We're at Loonacy, Loonacy, and we are a Minnesota United podcast that also talks some craft beer.
Ooh, that's an interesting little twist on that. I like that.
Yeah, I'm actually drinking a craft beer today, actually from Insight Brewing in Minneapolis here. So it's we always talk local Minnesota beers on this podcast, and David, of course, has his Florida ones down there. So so it's always very interesting whenever we have our something new on there.
That's super cool. Connor, we need to do something cool like that. Why don't we do anything cool like that?
We have our Scarf of the Week segment. What do you mean?
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
And one more thing really quick, actually. We next week we are about to record our 200th episode. So
congratulations.
Nice.
Thanks. So yeah, we'll be making it kind of a special one before this preview of the season. It's been a few weeks since we've recorded one, so preview of the season, and then we've got a little game show between the other hosts too that I've got. So it's gonna be awesome.
Oh, awesome. Well, our fans should love that because we do a fun game Friday every week, or we try to at least. Mr. Wright usually dips out on it, but we do tons of things, tic-tac-toes and guess the players and just, general trivia stuff that our fans seem to like. So they'll love that. If you guys want to go see that and give them some love for the 200th episode, go subscribe, go check them out. Let them know that you came from our area. If you're new here listening through your Loonacy connection, as we just mentioned, we do lots of games. We'll give you your weekly MLS takes, as well as doing a really big MLS history segment. So we're really big into stories of past MLS seasons and teams. We're 50 stories into that series from last season. So stick around if that's something you want to do. Come subscribe to us and hang out. But again, Connor, we really wanted to thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate it. We hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see everybody next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.